Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are crime dramas. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the series finale of The Woman in the Wall. Great series finale. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So this episode finally gives us all the answers we wanted, kind of finally explaining everything. It turns out it's kind of what I thought. Aoife has a medical condition. It's like some after effect of not having any treated epilepsy. I wonder, is it something where it's just like, I guess like throughout the rest of her life she's always going to have it, because it's something that's triggered by like trauma, like it's triggered by stress. And so that's what happened. Like the first time she died and was resurrected, it was because she heard the children crying. All the children, every single child she took part in helping take away from these mothers. And this is her 30 years later finally confronting Father Percy about it all, about we have to come clean. But Father Percy, he felt no shame, which is so interesting too, considering like how close he was to Coleman. You were just as responsible for Coleman's circumstances, but in his twisted mind he believed like, no, I'm doing good, I'm doing right. These kids, they weren't their mothers. And he's showing the letters off to Aoife like, look at them, these letters from the parents and the children, they're happy. Those women weren't their mothers. But it's like, that wasn't for you to decide that they were unfit. You never gave them a chance. Not only did you take their children from them, you abused them. It's like, and the fact is, they are so twisted that they don't even see the evil that they are. Like, Father Percy felt glad about what they did. Aoife finally, recognizing her part to play. And maybe it's just the fact is her daughter being older really struck her. Like, I'm wondering what really, after all these years, it's been like 30 years, why now did it finally get, I guess it's better now than not at all to ever grow a conscience. It was eating away at her the entire time, but I think she buried it so much because she tried to run away from it. That's why she's like, I didn't finish my vows as a sister. To be fair, she kind of quote unquote died without actually dying, so that's what interrupted it. But I think it also kind of gave her an excuse not to see it through, or maybe her just dying made her. It feels like that was probably her choice to never try and pick that back up and just walked away because she was too guilt-ridden, and now it finally caught up with her. It took her decades, but she wanted to do right by them. So she wanted to take the letters and try and get some justice for these moms. But the fact is, like, her and Father Percy went to a struggle. He fell down the stairs, but he wasn't dead. As we know, that throughout the altercation, we know that he made a call afterwards, but I felt like she had hit him, and then maybe after he made the call, he fell down the stairs. It's like, no, she heard him groaning. He was fine, so she didn't kill him, so she bounced, took his car and everything. Then we see her meeting with Clemens, and then we saw her trying to meet up with Lorna, but Lorna was kind of out of it at the time. Obviously, she fell back and hit her head during the bar when she met Michael. In fact, she was about to approach Aoife was about to approach Lorna if Michael hadn't gotten away. So it's just like little things compounding upon themselves. And then like Aoife took her back home in the taxi, but Aoife put her in her bed. In the moment, like, Aoife found the box, it had all this stuff, and it just brought back all the pain of like, oh my God, what did I do? What I was a part of, and it triggered her condition, and she passed out. She wasn't dead, and so showing us what happened at the end of the last episode. But even I was like still confused because I was like, okay, so she's alive, but the wall that, like, when the wall was not disturbed, so I was like, did she replaster it or something? It's like, no, she didn't. I was like, so how the hell did she get out? And now that Lorna knows about this, well, she doesn't know like the medical condition, but like, no, she wasn't dead. She looks around the hole in the wall and doesn't, like, sees no signs. I'm like, then where the hell has she been this entire time? Like, what happened? Because I guess it's like, truth be told, is like the plaster is so good that it's like, I guess Aoife, because she was also like, there's probably not enough room to build up momentum to break, like, she's probably not strong enough to break through the wall, I guess. Because I guess it's like, well, I guess Lorna did a really good job of like reinforcing, but I guess it's like, maybe that's also supposed to be indicative of it's not that easy to break through a wall. I think without any studs or anything behind it, it's actually not. I guess in my head, I'd assume it'd be. Maybe, once again, maybe I'm underestimating, because I've put a hole in a wall before previously. Let's not kind of go down that route, but I've done that before. But the wall was already kind of weak to begin with, and it's not made out of the same material, but it kind of is. So that's why I was kind of like, I guess she just wasn't able to like do what she needed to. Like I said, I guess like either the materials are just that strong naturally, or Lorna just did a really, really good job of patching it up, making sure no one could find Aoife's body. But then, before she could even finish worrying about that, Coleman calls her up and tells her about Coyle and his responsibility behind all of this. And so it's like, yeah, this bastard, all the places they fixed up out of quote unquote charity were places that were run down that they rebuilt, because basically they were paving over all their mistakes. They were covering up their mistakes in the form of charity. Like, oh, look what we did to this rundown place. It's like, or this orphanage or this and that. We're refurbishing it, which also makes me go like, that's where you probably get into the whole like like the amount of money that Percy was like, this is for the I don't think you can correlate it, but I was wondering if that was kind of like how they were laundering the money by pretending like, oh, it was for this specific, because it was for specific stuff. I thought, oh, it's a donation, or this amount of money is for refurbishing. So it's like they probably like use that to launder the money through, like, oh, these donations are going towards this for charity, yada yada, when it's actually lining not just one but quite a few people's pockets. So when it's all said and done, Coleman and Massey confront him, but they don't have anything that could really stick to him. But it's like they use the name Ignatius in front of him. It's like, yeah, we know about you and all that you've done. So did you kill Father Percy because he was a loose end? But it's like, no, he has an airtight alibi for Percy's murder. That was something that was brought up last episode, but I forgot to talk about it. Aoife, it might have been last episode. Yeah, I think it was last episode. Aoife and her husband, like, could not, like, because they were on the way to Kilkenor, like, at the time, like, they would have been on the road at that time, so there was no way she could be responsible for Percy's death. So that they had kind of cleared her and her husband of that in that regard. But the problem is Coyle has an alibi, so I was like, did he actually not do it? Then who did it? I do love the reveal of ultimately who it is. There's a few things. I actually want to stay on the Coleman stuff before we switch over to the Lorna stuff. But staying on Coleman, he talked to Massey because it's like there's nothing they can do about Coyle, but it's like he's definitely responsible for all this. They were able to get away with all they've done. Like, he's like, even I was sold, and Massey's like, I know, but we don't, like, we can't do anything about that. Like, all we can do is try to investigate the thing we're actually here to investigate, and that's Percy's murder. But when Massey and Coleman are talking, we find out the true meaning behind the cruelty man, the person from Coleman's nightmares. It turns out the cruelty man is a nickname given to an investigator who investigates children that were treated, like the cruelty towards children. So it turns out the cruelty man is a good guy. He's someone there to investigate, I think, organizations and seeing whether or not there's abuse. And so Coleman's thinking back to that nun telling him, oh, the cruelty man will get you, run. It's because they were hiding Coleman away because they want to keep everything above board. So they made him so terrified of, oh, the cruelty man will come and get you if you're not quiet. So they were trying to hide their abuse and their cruelty by hiding him away. And he was scared of a monster. And he's even like, that's the irony behind it. It's like the person I was most scared of that I thought was a monster, because he had never actually seen the cruelty man. It's just that's what he envisions he is, because it was nightmare fuel induced by the nuns. They wanted to protect themselves. And it's like the one person who actually could have done something for me even back then was a person I was running and hiding from, that I was afraid of, thought was a monster. It's like, that is sick and twisted. But it's just because they were trying to cover up their crimes. I wonder, did any other kids get that same treatment? Obviously, it's just how much it stuck with Coleman that even now, he had those nightmares as a kid, and now even as an adult, he's still having those nightmares. And it's just like the sad reality of, like, man, the one person that could have helped me is like they lied to me and manipulated me for the sole purpose of covering up their crimes, covering up their cruelty. And so Coleman goes to confront Coyle, and it's like, oh, like, trust me, like, because the whole thing was about, the Catholicism needs to come into the present day, and it's reckoning, yada yada. Coleman's like, oh, your reckoning is going to come, like, you and everyone. I'm coming after every one of you, and I will not stop. Took his phone, called the person that he called that night. It's like, well, we know he talked to Father Percy. He even admitted, like, right, he called me, but I wasn't there to kill him because I had an alibi from like 6 to 9, so it couldn't have been me. But then the phone rings, and I was like, "Who's going to pick up? Who's going to pick up?" And then it's a person, like, because a person's in the, like, the way that it's filmed, all the focus is completely on Coleman, and they're kind of blurred out because of the depth of field. And then all of a sudden, like, they come into focus. I was like, oh, the woman pretending to be Aoife's daughter. I was like, oh my, because I was like, right, I completely, like, forgot you have not circled back into the show since, like, what was that, episode 3 or 4? No, that was episode 3. You were in the show, and we hadn't seen you since you disappeared. So I was like, right. So we meet her. Her name's Leslie. She's the person that Coyle was like, yo, handle this. And he's talking to her. He's like, hey, okay, so he's going to come over here. He's going to arrest you. But I need to know that you basically going to keep it 10 toes down. I hope that you're going to, recognize, like, the good that we do, because there's so many people involved in this. That's the sad thing. And she does it willingly. I mean, to be fair, she tried to run, even pulled a knife on Coleman, which that's already an issue in itself. Like, you attacked the officer who told you to stop. So you're already an issue there. But yeah, she believes in the good that they do. But it's like, yeah, regardless of it all, you still murdered someone, but you're so wrapped up in this believing the good that it is. I wondered if she probably doesn't even know, because Coleman didn't bring it up, but it's like, yeah, the crimes that they committed, yeah, I'm part of the people that were screwed over. We even see Coleman's, like, lieutenant or captain or whatever talking to Coyle later, because I'm sure because he's probably like spinning it like, oh, I had no idea she was responsible, I don't know what's going on here, whatever she did, that's her. Like, they have enough spin and control. Obviously they called, like, a couple episodes back to get Coleman kind of suspended for a little bit because of his quote-unquote harassment. But it's just, once again, just showing you how powerful these people are and the connections that they have. They're able to sweet talk stuff. But once again, Leslie believes that, like, right, the good that's done, and she swallowed, she's drunk the Kool-Aid. She believes the BS, and not realizing, like, how terrible all of this is. So we'll circle back to that, but at the same time this was all going down, we had 2 other storylines happening. We had, first and foremost, Lorna going to, like, the school. She found out about St. Alma, and it turns out it was a children's hospital for children that were, like, at the mommy, because it was originally like a mommy and baby home, and then it got turned into, like, what is now like a school. And she went there. She lied initially, but then she eventually told a woman, hey, this used to be a mom and baby home. My daughter was sent here. I need to find her. It's like, oh, let me get you in touch with, like, one of the governor people that worked in this place, who's still around from that time, who might know something. Turns out the actor, I was like, oh, I know that dude. I just recently saw him in the show Obituary, which kind of sucks because, like, his character in Obituary was kind of a douchebag, and his character's a douchebag in the show, which so. But yeah, like, at first I was like, oh, is he actually going to help? I was, like, a little weary of him, and then he turned the shit around on Lorna being like, you should be aware, like, some children, like, have some resentment towards their mothers, like, feeling like they're abandoned. It's like, at first it seemed like, okay, he's trying to prepare her for, like, what might happen, like, because some children don't want to be found type of situation, but it felt a little like, it sounds a little off. And then he starts going into all the stuff that's like, yeah, you were committed at one point in time. Oh, aren't you blamed a suspect for a arson case and this and that? He's doing exactly what Eileen, I mean, that's right out of Sister Eileen's playbook of gaslighting you and of being like, oh, you're a terrible person, like, oh, you're not fit to be a mother, you never were, yada yada yada. I mean, Eileen literally did this to Warner, like, what, a couple episodes back, present day. So it's just like, I think that was in fact that was episode 4 she did it. And it's like, he's doing the same thing, kind of ripping her apart, and it's just like, I'm not mad, I'm not crazy, I just want my daughter. And he's just like, right, well, thanks for listening, Lorna, and just leaves. It's like, you piece of shit. And I was like, they don't circle back to it, but that guy has to be, considering he was around at that time, it's most likely he was involved in all of these dealings, so helping unearth, like, helping you find your daughter would kind of be going against protecting your self-interest. So I don't know, maybe he's just some douchebag being like, oh, you got here under false pretenses, you're a liar, which is something like, cause we haven't really covered that too much in this. The only person we really got that from was Thomas. Massey never said they were liars. He knew what was what, but he didn't really push it too much. And that was also the point that Massey had made in this episode too, where he's just like, we all knew. We might not have known for sure, but we all knew some shit was going down at the Magdalene Laundry, and none of us did anything. So we are just as copacetic in all of this, because Lorna made him kind of have to finally confront a lot of stuff of like, yeah, specifically using an example of Clements. It's like, I'm the same way. He's like, I took so many girls back. I put so many girls in taxis and sent them back to that hellhole, And that's for him. For him, this is an opportunity to begin some steps towards finally making it right after all this time. I mean, that's what a lot of people are. Better late than never. That's the phrasing I was trying to think of earlier in the review. But yeah, that phrasing, I'm like, yeah, it took you this long to really act upon it, but it's better late than you not. I mean, you're not a Sister Eileen or Coyle or Father Percy, who, I don't know, at least Father Percy and Sister Eileen will justify it, and even Leslie, by being like, yeah, like, this is all for the greater good. Coyle is making bank off of this, so I don't know if he's so deluded enough he actually believes this is good like the others do, or he's just fading like that, and he's like, oh, I know this is shitty, but I'm making a lot of money and making a lot of other people money, so I'm not about to have our racket exposed, I mean, once again, it shows just how much of a larger piece of shit you are, because you're a part of this group about trying to make them, the government acknowledge like the terrible shit that went down at these laundries and making them be recognized as laundries, even though you had your part to play in all this with the adoptions, and not even the adoptions, the quote-unquote adoptions, but what they really were was human trafficking. You were selling children. So that's why later on Massey met up with Amy and showed her the book and showed her her daughter's name, Emily. Sadly, we find out Emily died. They weren't, I interpreted it as they were lying to her when they were like, oh, because she did say, like, before I was even finished giving birth, they said my baby had died. So it was like I think it was a miscarriage situation. I didn't interpret it as that. I thought it was like, oh, like, she was very specific with her wording of before I was even done giving birth, they said my baby had died. Usually they wait till after the fact. So, I should have picked up on that. But it's like, yeah, sadly, her baby died. Like, only 208 were found out to still be alive. The other, 87 were, in fact, dead. But it's like, we have no records of their burials, so they must be buried here. And so that's where Massey comes with Amy to confront Sister Eileen, and she's such a piece of shit. She's like, you can't do anything because you signed those forms. It's like, you're right, we can't bring up any charges against you. But Massey's like, I can. The fact of the matter is, there's no longer turning a blind eye to this. We know what this is. And he's like, I'm making it my job to come after you. He's like, so you have one last chance to tell us where Emily and the others are buried. He's like, all right, you won't, I don't know. Okay, that's fine, Sister Eileen. I'll be back. You'll be seeing me again soon. I'm like, hell yeah, Massey, because Amy remembers her. I guess Sister Eileen was even there when the older ladies were there too, because they are like, yeah, we recognize you, Sister Eileen. You might not remember us, but we remember you. And just like, she didn't have no smart retorts to have either. She was quiet, because that's all they can do. But that's the sad thing. When this show is over, like, when it comes to this story, it's not fully resolved. They don't have enough to go after Coyle or anyone involved because no one's willing to talk. They don't have enough pressure to put on these people to make. All they need is one person to run their mouth, and it could cascade and end up bringing this whole thing down. But where the story ends, we don't get that conclusion. I don't know if it's fully like that in real life too. Once again, this story isn't 100% based on truth. The larger conversation about the Magdalene laundries these are probably parallels to real people's stories in some capacity. There are some people who obviously have similar stories to these characters, but this story in itself is fictitious, just based on something that is real. But so. But I once again, I've only looked into it a little bit, and that was at the beginning of the season, at the beginning of the series. So I haven't looked into it too deeply. I think there's still stuff with this. Obviously, it's a one of those things of it never goes away. It's still a part of Ireland's history. So I think it's still dealt with. I don't think it's something that's still even fully resolved. I think I even talked about it in the first episode. I don't think it's something that's even fully resolved in present day in 2024. But maybe I'm mistaken. Like I said, I am speaking from ignorance. I looked it up a little bit at the beginning of the series, like I said, so I don't know. And that was quite a few weeks ago. I looked that up, so probably over a little less than 2 months ago, so it's been a hot minute. So, and even then, I didn't read everything, so I'm not well educated enough to fully kind of comment on it. Like I said, present day, that was my understanding, but I could be completely mistaken in where that currently stands in the public eye of Ireland and how it's recognized in Ireland on the government side of things. But nevertheless, that's kind of where things, like I said, stand in the show. And going back to Lorna, she was back at home after everything. And before she went inside, Michael showed up and he wanted to kind of take her away. He's like, please let me take you away from this place. But for Lorna, it's like, I think with everything that's going on, it's like, I can't go without, like, I think for her, it's like, even if I go somewhere, it's always going to nag at me. And I think after everything she's been through, she kind of, I think there's a part of her that feels like she doesn't deserve to kind of start over. She doesn't deserve to kind of like, there's just been too much pain on her own part. What happened to Clemens, like, not fully knowing about her daughter's circumstances. So many, like, it's just, there's a lot where I think she just can't let herself be happy because she doesn't think she deserves to be. So she just tells Michael, like, I'm sorry, like, she can't go, and he leaves. And so hopefully they're able to stay in touch in the future. I don't know. I did think it was interesting the moment all those crows or whatever were outside her house. I was like, that seems like they're associated with a dead body. So I'm like, she's dead somewhere, isn't she, Aoife? Because we haven't seen her the entire show, because this entire show, like, present day, has been taking place over the course of like maybe a week, because last episode she was told Brita, Clement's daughter, like, yeah, your mom died like a couple days ago. So it's like, that was what episode, she died at the end of maybe episode 2, I believe. Maybe, I believe, no, it was definitely at the end of episode. Wait, what episode was that? Now I'm thinking about it. Was it at the end of episode 3 that she died? No. I think it was at the end of episode 2, and episode 3 was her funeral. But yeah, so that was only like a couple days ago. So it's probably been maybe a week, maybe 2, in the entirety of the story present day throughout this entire investigation of Percy's murder. But either way, but yeah, like, ain't no one seen her in all that time, so I was like, yeah, she probably is gone. But before Lorna even, like, she's in the house, and she still also has that message above her house, her place, saying, like, oh, the Sisters of Seven Joys murdered my daughter, so. But she calls Coleman, and she's just like, do you still love your mom? And he's like, yeah, I do. Like, and that's what something I was worried about. It's like, they still have a lot to talk about, I'm sure, but it doesn't change the fact that he's like, yeah, I do love my mom. The fact of the matter is, I think she did save me. And it kind of, because it got Lorna thinking, like, right, like, is it right for me to go looking for my daughter? Like, maybe wherever she is, her adopted circumstances, maybe she's good, happy, and healthy, and who am I to kind of bring all my baggage and me wanting to find her? Maybe it's going to cause a lot more pain. Like, what that doctor dude said to her back at St. Almost, like, got to her. And she's like, are you happy and stuff like that? And it's like, well, what about your biological mom? Like, what if you never find her? And he's like, it's okay, because I love my mom, but I also love, Catherine as well. He's like, because she loved me, didn't she? And then cutting to Lorna breaking down, being like, yes, she did. It's like, yeah, because she's like, speaking as a mother in that circumstances, I know I love Agnes, so I know your mom feels the same way about you, because it's like, what if you never find her? And it almost made Lorna kind of feel like, what if I never find my daughter? I think, like I said, I think the same thing's applicable with Clement's case. I think I kind of cut it out of episode 5, because I kind of went on this whole diatribe about it, but yeah, I think that's why Clement's circumstances played out the way it did, is because she thought it was impossible. They didn't really have the leads they needed to try and find her daughter. Probably didn't think it was possible. Maybe if Jay continued working with Aoife, maybe she could have, but I think she felt that hopelessness that Lorna felt in this moment, and it's just, I was scared Lorna was going to do something to herself. But it was also this powerful moment, just like her crying, and then like you see Coleman on the other side crying too, be like, no, Lorna, it's, and she's like, okay, thank you, because it's what she kind of needed to hear at the time. So she crawls into the wall to look for Aoife, sees like her shoes, so she had climbed up, I don't know. I guess like maybe it connects to the attic of another building or whatever, or like I don't know how that apartment situation or that place situation, like where did she end up? Like, because it seemed like, because she went upstairs and I guess she ended up crawling up to her attic but couldn't find her way out. Or I don't know where Lorna was when she was climbing up the stairs and found Aoife's dead body. She was there for a while. You could hear the flies buzzing, like she'd been dead for quite a few days. So probably just couldn't find any way out, couldn't let anyone know where she was. So it's sad. So when it's all said and done, Lorna like turns herself over to Coleman and he was like, right, and he's like, we got to get your story straight, but she's like, no, like it's okay, because she doesn't want to play like, oh, I was crazy, I wasn't in my right mind. It's like, no, I need to pay for what I've done, like regardless of, I didn't mean to kill her, but I still did. It's my fault she died, and I kind of have to take responsibility, and I'm not going to play like, oh, the insane card, because it's like, I was already labeled as crazy and insane before, and I won't let anyone label me as that, because I was never crazy or mad. I was just someone that went through something traumatic, and that was part of her sleepwalking. And yeah, she like did some arson, but that's the worst thing she did, well, other than inadvertently, accidentally killing someone. And I think that will go a long way in a grand scheme of things. But the thing that Aoife had on her, just like Clemens, she has a picture of Agnes. And she's able to show it off to Coleman. It's like, your daughter's still out there, but she's like, look at her. She's happy. That's all I need to know. And so she lets Massey take her away at the end of the episode. So we don't get the full scope of everything, but there is something beautiful and poetic about that moment where Lorna lays back. Because last episode I didn't talk about it, but like Lorna's like, yeah, I haven't slept in like a week. Because it's like, what is I don't know, what's today? And Coleman was like Wednesday, and she's like, yeah, so like about a week or something. So, but her finally, after everything, kind of having some closure, some peace of mind, finally being able to kind of close her eyes and go to sleep, which is ironic because the next scene, like her and Coleman are sitting down talking, and she's like, wow, you look tired. He's like, nah, we just haven't been able to make headway on the case. But he's like, I found her, because we found out why some of the donations were weird numbers, because it was a currency exchange from like translating it into dollars. That's why translating it from dollars. That's why it was such weird. It wasn't exact money. Why there were like penny percentages. Well, once again, I'm not familiar enough with the Irish currency to fully talk about that. But it's like, because of that, it's like that's where you're like, some of the kids were sent overseas. Your daughter was in Boston, and I tracked down Agnes. It's like, oh, okay, how is she? What she's like? It's like, no, you can talk to her. It's like, I can. It's like, yeah. And so Coleman takes her to a room where she can sit at a computer and talk to her. And it's like, what time is it there? It's like, oh, 7. It's like, oh, but I don't want to bother or disturb her while she's about to have breakfast, because she's nervous and she doesn't want to mess this up. But it's like, no, she's been looking forward to this too. Because it's like, ever since she found out she was adopted, she's been looking for you just as much as you've been looking for her, Lorna. And so we don't get to see, but it's nice enough to end it there, where we hear the call go through and it gets picked up, and it's like a hi, type of situation. So that's all we get, but that's still beautiful enough. Like I said, it's unresolved. You hope that everything happens, but I think it also means a lot to Coleman, like being able to kind of reunite them after everything Lorna's been through. It's one of many. Like, even if he's not able to do that for everyone else, being able to do it at least for one of the mothers, I'm sure it also makes him feel good about, maybe in some shape or form, I could end up finding my mom too. So I think it's kind of a beautiful, like, it's this very bittersweet ending, because once again, not everything's resolved, and it's kind of fine, because as many people would tell you with these type of things, it's like, crime dramas, whereas like cases, they're never clean. Like, it's rarely like, you always want the fully happy ending, and we got it for the most part, but it's still like, not everything's fully resolved. Justice hasn't been fully served, but they're on notice. Everyone knows, like, the cockroaches are scurrying because they know people are investigating. Everyone's hush, but all it takes is one crack in the armor for it to all shatter, from a metaphorical standpoint. So I just great show in general. I was talking about it earlier, but it's like, this show taught me something I didn't know. Like I said, the Magdalene Laundries. I brought it up at the beginning of the series. Like, this is the first time I'd ever heard of this. I am 31 years old, and I've never heard of the Magdalene Laundries. To be fair, I'm an American. I'm not well versed. I'm saying that from the perspective of my view from the world is a very U.S. centric. Like, I don't really know I know some stuff here and there as I learned at school from history and stuff, sure, but there's just so many things I just never knew Ireland had this whole, like, situation. I know a great example I'll give you is, like, because much like I learned from this show, another example I talk about all the time is the Tulsa massacre here in the U.S. I only know about the whole Black Wall Street situation because of the TV show Watchmen. Like, me and quite a few other people only discovered about that because I'd never learned about that in history. Like that, even from a U.S. history standpoint, there's stuff you're learning every day about some of the tragedies and terrible shit that's going down in this country alone. And I've only like probably scratched the surface of like some of the stuff that's happened internationally, from my perspective internationally. But it's like every country's got its dark history. Some probably darker than others, but it doesn't change the fact is that like this story is a pretty dark story. But I think it's important to be able to get this story out there. Like I said, like for people like me who would have never known this was a thing, I think that is important to know about. Just like, I mean, once again, it ties into the line from Massey where he's like, none of us wanted to believe that anyone in our country could be capable of this type of evil. And it's like there are just some like there is pure evil in the world to do some shit like this. Like, there takes some very, very evil motherfuckers to do something like that, So, but I appreciate everyone involved with bringing this story to light. Once again, even if it is like a fictitious taking of a story constructed from like a real life thing, I still appreciate everyone bringing that light to so many people like me who never knew something like this happened, So, to everyone involved in part of the show, in front of the camera, behind the camera, like from top to bottom, everyone involved, thank you for bringing such a great eye-opening show, very compelling show, and I wish everyone involved the best in their future endeavors, whatever they may be. But that's really all I want to talk about. To the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.